Hey pilots, Drain Man here, and today I have a very special video. Alright, so the very first thing is, this drone here is a high-end FPV racing drone. We built this drone in a previous video, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the link down in the video description, and I'm also going to put a card right there. And with that, you can watch and learn how to build this drone step by step. Well, now that we've built it, we can't just go fly away. There's too many things that have to get done first. In this video, we are going to do that. We're going to go step by step. So one of the very first things that we did is we made sure that everything powered on and everything worked. So let's go ahead and dive right into Betaflight. Alright, so when you're setting up your drone, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need your Tyrannus. Make sure you have your Tyrannus. Make sure you've got it ready to go and it's bound to your receiver. The next thing you're going to need is your quad. You have to have your quad. The very next thing you're going to need is you are going to need Betaflight. You are also going to need BL Heli. You don't have to have that depending on how you built your drone. There is a couple ways around it, but you're going to need it. Just have it ready because we're going to set it up. The next thing you're going to need is a battery. You've got to have your battery. If you haven't set up your VTX yet, that's fine. If you're rocking a Unify, go ahead and unlock it. Once you've unlocked it, then you can go ahead and go to any channel you want, and you can also go to any milliwatt you want because it is restricted due to ham licensing. First thing I want you guys to do is plug your quad into Betaflight. And yes, we're going to fly this quad. We are going to take it for a test run. So if you're curious how an FPV high-end racing drone flies, you're going to get to find out. Alright, so now we're in Betaflight together. One of the very first things I want you guys to do is to make sure your orientation is correct. This is important. Make sure when you tilt your quad forward, your model moves forward. When you tilt your quad backwards, that your quad goes backwards. To the right, to the right, to the left, okay? If it doesn't do that, there's some things you have to do. And that's why we're kind of going through this together, because one of the things with setting up a new quad is, you know, it's not all roses and peaches and unicorns and freaking puppies. What happens is sometimes you run into problems. And if you have those problems and in the video you're watching on YouTube, they don't address these problems, then you got no way to fix them. You're like, crap, what do I do? And then you're Googling for hours and you're this and you're that. So in this video, I'm going to kind of go over some of those issues. So if you're having them, you'll be able to get them fixed. So if your quad is not orientated correctly, okay, that means when you go to the right, it's going somewhere else, or when you tilt back, it's going somewhere else. You have to come over here to the configurations tab and you have to adjust it right here in the board alignment section, okay? And what that means is you can rotate your board with the roll, the pitch, or the yaw. Alright, so that's the first thing we're going to do. Now that we know that our flight controller is in our quad correctly, let's go ahead and check out the version of Betaflight that we're in. If we're not in a good version, I want to go ahead and flash. So in the new Betaflight, if you're rocking Betaflight 10.5.1 or newer, which depending on the time that you're watching this video, you can head down to the CLI, and down in the CLI we can type in version. And this is going to let us know what version we have. Do you see right there? I am rocking 3.5.6. That means this is an old version of Betaflight. Well, I'm setting up a brand new quad. I want new firmware. I want the hottest, newest technology that they got, and that's what I'm going to have. So let's do it. So in here, we are going to find out our target. And our target, as you can see right here, is T-Motor F4. So let's head back over to Setup. And what we're going to do now is we are going to disconnect and unplug your quad. There is a boot button on your flight controller. Hold down that boot button and plug this cord in. If you don't know how to do any of this, I have a video on how to flash. The audio is a little sketch because my microphone was acting up that day, but who cares? It's still a good video. I will drop that down in the video description. So go ahead and hold down the boot button and power up your quad. If at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. Just kidding. Listen, if you do it and it doesn't enter, because what you're looking for right here in the manual selection up here, you're looking for DFU mode. And as you can see, if I would have connected and it understood normal connection, it would have jumped right to a comm and it would have entered right in serial base. The computer is not picking it up, so I'm not able to get into DFU mode. So that's perfect. Here's our first complication. So when you guys are watching videos and everybody's just getting into DFU mode so easy, you guys won't have to worry about that because I'm going to show you how to fix it. So what we need to do now is we need to go Impulse RC Driver Fixer. Do you see that? I have it. If you don't have it, go ahead and download it from online, and once you have that, just have my screen probably blacked out right now, but don't worry, it's because it's asking for permission. Have your thing plugged in, and when you press yes, you're going to see that it is searching for, oh, it's doing it, there you go. It is installing the driver already. It searches for the flight controller and it fixes the driver, just like that. Look at that. Success, driver fixed. So now we just press OK, and now we should be able to get into DFU mode without a problem. Alright, do you see right here where it says DFU? Before it wasn't working, we used the driver fixer, now it's working great. Alright, so now we finally made it into DFU mode. I want you guys to go ahead and click Enable Expert Mode. First, you need to pick the flight controller that you're working with, and what that is that's your target. You've got to have the right target. That is why in the CLI command we typed version and we found our target. So let's go ahead and pull our target up. And there it is, T-Motor F4. That is a target that we found. You guys remember, we just did it together. Me and you, we just found it. That's the one. Alright, so now that you've got that, now you can pick the actual firmware that you want. I enabled expert mode because it allows you to see unstable releases, more like beta releases. So what you can see right here is we have a 4.0.6 and we've got a 4.0.5. Me, I want the newest one. So I'm going to go with the 06. Now that you've selected it, go ahead and click Full Chip Erase. And after you've done that, down here you'll see Load Firmware Online. Click that. Once you have your firmware, go ahead and click Flash Firmware. First thing it's going to do is erase everything, and then it is going to flash everything. Now that we're flashing the firmware, we are going to have a newer firmware on our board. What that means is we are going to be able to do a lot more. We're going to have more options, more parameters, better suggestions. The defaults are just going to be better right away because Betaflight's working hard to get us the best firmware possible. Alright, so as soon as you're done flashing, you're going to notice at the top you're going to enter back into a COM port. Once you've done that, hit connect. And here we are. Now let's go ahead and confirm again. Front is front, back is back, left, right. Alright, so our quad is updated. Up here you'll see our new firmware, 4.0.6. Okay, pause. So now that we've updated the firmware, which means if your flight controller has newer firmware, you have an option right here that says Activate Bootloader. And that's pretty cool. That means you can just put it right into DFU mode without doing none of that button crap. But the firmware that was on this flight controller was older, so we didn't have that option. So now if a new firmware drops tomorrow or next month, I'll no longer have to bother with holding down the button. I can just activate it right through there. That's pretty cool. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to enable expert mode. So go ahead and do that now by clicking right here. Once you have enabled expert mode, now you'll get all the same parameters that I have. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to roll through all of the tabs. We're going to start at the very top. The very first tab is the ports tab. This is a tab where you're going to set up your smart audio, make sure it's on the right peripheral. You're going to set up your receiver, make sure it's on the right one. If you're doing any type of camera control, you want to set that up. If you've got GPS, if you've got any of those things, this is where you want to set that up. Our Crossfire from my video that we programmed together, soldered, that we soldered up together is on UART 5. That means we went TX5 and RX5. So I'm going to check this box right here. It's already checked. We're good to go. For this T-Motor F4 flight controller, the smart audio wire of the Unify, I soldered to TX2. So I'm going to go right here to UART2. I'm going to go to peripherals. I'm going to hit the drop down and I'm going to hit smart audio. If you've got a tramp or something else, use it. Go to that one. Don't click smart audio if you have a tramp. After you've done that, click save and reboot. After you've rebooted your quad, go ahead and come into configuration and let's start setting stuff up. The very first thing for me is I absolutely do not fly anything. I don't care if it's a micro or a Cinewhoop. I don't fly anything if it's not reverse props. I just prefer it. I like the way it flies better. So I put on my reverse motor direction, and there's more to it than just that because we got to make sure that the motors are going in the right direction, and we're going to do that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to the ESC portion. It all depends on what ESC you have. You cannot just set it to what I set it to. It depends on what you have. If you don't know what you have, you need to go look it up. So my ESC runs D-Shot 1200. My motor idle throttle value is at 5.5. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to leave it right where it is. If you want it a little lower, you could drop it down to 4.5 or 5, depending on how you like things, and also depending on what your quad likes. You know, mine, I'm going to roll at 5.5. In your Tyrannus, we're not going to do much setting up. I have plenty of videos and stuff like that. I am going to set a throttle cap on this quad. It's a very high KV. Quad control is very important. Alright, heading down to the system configuration. I'm not going to touch too much. I'm going to turn off my barometer and my magnetometer because I do not need them. I'm not going to use them. My accelerator trim, I'm not touching. My arming, I'm going to change to 180. So that way if I land on something that's not perfectly flat, I'll still be able to take off. My craft name is going to be Drainman FPV because that's what I like in my OSD. You won't touch your camera angle and your receiver. We do have a serial based receiver and we do have Crossfire. That's what I'm running, so that's what I've put. Other features. Now that we are running the newest firmware, this is pretty much set up in a very good way. If you're running an older firmware, you're probably going to have to adjust some of these settings. So I have on telemetry, air mode, OSD, anti-gravity, and dynamic filter. I like them all. I keep them all on. I'm going to leave everything else alone, and I'm going to hit save and reboot. Another thing to set up is your RSSI. I have a video on that as well. I'm going to put that down in the video description as well. Alright, now that we've done that, make sure you have a fail-safe set. I'm not going to go through that in this video. Head over to PID tuning. In PID tuning, you can adjust some of the things that you'd like. If you like smart feed forward, if you like I-term rotation, any of those things that you like, go ahead and turn them on. If you don't know what they do and you're unsure, me explaining it to you is not going to be as good as you turning it on. Don't turn on a bunch of things. Just turn on one thing at a time. Go fly it. Come back. If you like it, roll with it. If you don't like the way it flies, turn it back off. My feed forward, I keep at 100. I keep my RC right there. For roll, I stay there. I like that. Alright. Those are my current rates that I like, that I use. I like the way it flies. It is a racing drone, so feel free to tune your rates down a little bit so you have some quad control. Alright, heading over to your receiver. This is where it's important to have your receiver bound. If your receiver is not bound, it is not going to work. Go ahead and turn on your Tyrannus.
Oh yeah, that was the right switch.
Alright, so right away you're seeing in the bottom right, my quad is freaking out. It's spinning and spinning and spinning. We are going to click here and we are going to change it to Spectrum, which is TAER1234. Hit save. It'll immediately stop. Now, is it working? Yes, it is working. That means that I have bound my receiver to my remote. If you haven't done that, make sure you go do that. Once you have done that, hit save. Head over to your modes. In your modes, we're going to set up a couple things. First thing we need to set up is a arm. You're going to want to set this over the position that is on. So when I move this up, you'll see that it goes there. When I move it down, it goes there. See that? So for me, that is on. So that is why I have it over that. Next thing we want to do, at least for me, is I want flip over after crash. So I'm going to add a range, and I'm going to put that over the way that it should be. If you don't know how to do this, I do have a video on how to set up your modes. I want you to go ahead and check that out. I don't want to drag this video out for people who already know how to do it. If you've got anything else that you want to put on, like launch control, VTX control, any of those things you want to do, go ahead and put them on. Once again, make sure you hit save. Then head over to your motors. This is the part where you're going to need a battery. So click that you understand the risks and go ahead and plug your battery in and then power up. Make sure all 4 motors are spinning. I'm going to show you that all 4 of my motors are spinning. Do you see that? That LED lets you know that they're all spinning. So I just take my fingers and I touch. I'm going to see which direction each one is going. Okay. So by doing that, now I know which direction each motor is going. Please, please, please take your props off. So motor 4 is going in the wrong direction. Motor 1 is going in the wrong direction. So I need to change motors 1 and 4 because they are going in the wrong direction. If you're unsure which direction they're supposed to be going in, you can look up in the top left, right here, and whether you're running normal motor direction or reverse motor direction, you'll be able to see the little arrow and know which way to go. So now that I know that I need to change 1 and 4, I'm going to hit disconnect, and I'm going to pull up BL Heli 32. So here is my BL Heli 32. I need to plug in my battery before I connect.
Telemetry recovered.
And I'm going to press connect. I need to click read setup and I need to change 1 and 4. I'm going to click on number 1 with a right click, not a left click. Right click number 1. I'm going to change it to reverse and I'm going to hit right setup. After I've done that, I'm going to go to motor 4 and I'm going to hit reverse and I'm going to hit right setup. And as you can see up here, you can change your LED as well. I'm running blue on mine because I have blue motors, blue camera. I'm rocking the blue style, so I want to go with blue. So that's what I've done. Then I'm going to hit disconnect. We can head over back to Betaflight and go back to our motors tab, and then I will turn this on and spin up again. They are all spinning in the correct direction. Woohoo! Now go ahead and stop it. Boom. And you can go ahead and unplug now. Next up is to head over to the OSD tab. In here you're going to set up the things that you're going to see in your goggles. So it's good to grab your goggles and use that while you're setting up. Let me grab mine. Alright, so I've grabbed my goggles. I'm going to throw them on and let's go ahead and set this up together. Who's ready? Let's go. So first thing we need to do is we need to turn on, I want to turn on my battery voltage. I'm going to set it up there in the top left. I also want my craft name. I like that down here. And some cameras are different than others, so we will play that as we go. Next thing is I like my VTX channel. So I always set that in the bottom right. I like my MAW in the upper right. I'm good with that. That's all I want. So I'm going to hit save and I'm going to plug in a battery and I'm going to plug in my goggles and let's see how we're looking. Alright, looks good. So I'm going to hit save and disconnect. Alright pilots, that is how you set your quad up. Now I would go ahead and just double check, make sure everything works. I'm going to take it, I'm going to set it outside. Do not set it outside, throw your goggles down, and then just try to take off and go. You need to set it down and give a little test hover. Make sure everything is working the way that it's supposed to be working. You don't want to just fly away and hit yourself in the face because you're going to have your goggles down, and if you don't see it coming, you're going to be in trouble. Now that we know how to set up our Betaflight quad, let's go ahead and take it for a spin.